Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and as I like to do every month, I like to talk about the auctions over at ComicLink. And I probably don't cover the biggest comics. I just cover the kind of comics that I like and that I'm looking at, and you have to bid in order to get it on your watch list. So these are the ones that I was watching. I ended up not getting anything, even though I wanted a bunch of these. I just find the summer months really tough to focus on buying anything, whether it's eBay or ComicLink or anywhere, just because I'm traveling so much and busy. So all of these came and went. I didn't make any bids, but there were some really nice books that ended. And we're going to start with Amazing Spider-Man, some Silver Age books. We got a 9.4 white pages for ASM 41, the first appearance of the Rhino. This one I have in a 7.0, but this was a 9.4, which is towards the upper end of the available books, of the available census count. And I just love this book. It's really nice. I was just curious to see what this one would go for, and it ended up selling for $64.01. $64.01 was the final price on that one. And I think my top of the line estimate was around 6, so it came in higher than expected. But I don't remember the exact census count, but I know there's not many of these that are actually graded higher than this. So very, very awesome book there. Next up, ASM 121. This is The Death of Gwen Stacy, 9.8 white pages. And this is one you can actually find in a 9.8 fairly easily. These seem to come up every couple of months. And it's a great cover, really nice cover. This one did sell at $66.23. That one seems to be up a little bit even from last month. I vaguely remember one selling last month or maybe 2 months ago for maybe $500 less than that. So $66.23 was the final sales price. And another one, the very next issue, which is ASM 122. This is The Death of the Green Goblin, one that I would like to pick up. I don't know about a 9.8, but this one did have off-white to white pages, and Gil Kane, who was the, he did some of the interior art on it. He signed page 1 in marker. So they didn't authenticate the signature, but they just mentioned Gil Kane written on first page in marker. Didn't hurt the grade. 9.8 off-white to white pages. Awesome, awesome cover. And that one went for $39.50, which again, I think it's because of the off-white to white pages that price is down a little bit. I was expecting kind of $4,500, but that's kind of really in line. $4,500 to $5,000 is usually about right for a 9.8 for this book, but with white pages. So big discount, big haircut on that one. Another one I really want to get is this one. This is actually one I was very interested in. This was an 8.0 with white pages, ASM number 16. This is the first crossover for Daredevil, and the first meeting between Daredevil and Spider-Man in comics. I just really like the cover. It's also a ringmaster on the cover there. He's kind of a villain from the Silver Age. 8.0 white pages is kind of right down the heart of the budget I like to spend. And so this one did sell for $1,600, and even that number was maybe 100 or 2 higher than I was willing to go, so I didn't bother bidding on it. Next up, we had a 9.8. This was a direct edition for ASM 194, first appearance of the Black Cat. This is another one that's kind of on my want list in a 9.8, either direct or a newsstand. That one sold for $22.82. That's hanging in there pretty well, and there's been a lot of rumors lately about the fact that they're going to bring Black Cat into the Spider-Verse or, into the next Spider-Man movie. There's also, I know that Sydney Sweeney was in Madam Web. I know that, but the rumors are still there that she's going to appear as Black Cat, and I wouldn't complain. But $22.82 did take that home, and that's about right. I mean, it might be a little low, but newsstands are kind of at the upper end of almost $3,000. Sometimes they even go above $3,000 for the newsstand in a 9.8. Next up, ASM 300. I got 2 different ones that sold. This one was just the direct edition, and this is another one I really want to get, and the prices are dropping. Now, this one sold for $2,500, and as of the making of this video, there's another one that's also a 9.8, and I would argue it's not in nearly as good a condition as this one. This one had really clean edges to the pages. If you pulled up the serial number on CGC's website, the pages were pretty straight, and but some of them have like a lot of cuts and like jagged edges and things like that. Anyway, there's one that's going to end in the next 3 days or so that's already at like $2,800. And I find that weird because this one's freshly graded and it sold for $2,500 and it had cleaner edges to the pages. So your guess is as good as mine as to what the market's doing on that. But that's just one of those books I'm super particular about, and I'm not in a big rush because it seems to be on the downswing in terms of the price range for a 9.8 for ASM 300. Here is the signed one. This is the other one I really was interested in. Signed by Stan Lee. Very cool to get one of those, either signed by Stan Lee or Todd McFarlane would be great. But this is a yellow label signature series signed by Stan Lee on 5/25/10, and that one sold for $35.33. So, and that's about right. You know, if let's say a 9.8 unsigned goes for $2,500, like I just showed you. Usually a Stan Lee signature on a very popular, very high demand key issue book, no matter what it is, you can usually add about $1,000. That's kind of a general rule of thumb for a Stan Lee signed book with the same grade, unsigned versus signed by Stan Lee. If they're the same grade, add $1,000, especially in high grade. And so that kind of went right in line with where I was expecting. $3,500. Very nice book though. Daredevil number 183, newsstand edition, first meeting between Daredevil and the Punisher. And that's another one I really like, and it's really kind of come back down to earth a little bit. $291 on that one. The direct editions are sub $200, so that's a book that remains relatively inexpensive. There's a lot of them on the census, obviously, from 1982, but a great Frank Miller cover, and I like both of those characters a lot, and I love this cover. I absolutely love it. Next up was another one I was watching very closely, and I was on a boat the day that this I was on a boat fishing the day that this one ended, and I just forgot about it that night because I was so exhausted. 8.5 off-white to white for Detective Comics 359, the origin and first appearance of Batgirl. Great cover. This is a cover I really love, and I would love to get it in about this grade. Maybe an 8.0, but it's expensive. $46.75 was the winning price. My budget on it was $400 to $4,400 in that ballpark, and so it wouldn't have mattered if I had been looking at the time. But I just find it really hard to spend big money during the summer months because of travel and restaurants and camps for the kids and everything. I just get sidetracked. Lots of G.I. Joe books sold. Now this is one I have on my eBay search list. I got it everywhere. And when I saw this come up, I was like, I'm definitely buying this book. I'll overpay for it. This is a book that's really hard to find in a 9.8. That's G.I. Joe number 22. It's the first appearance of Roadblock, Duke, and Dr. Mindbender, but it's really about the cover for me. I love Destro, and it's kind of got a cool Destro playing chess or whatever with the different G.I. Joe characters, but this one is overgraded. And this is why you got to buy the book and not the grade. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, if I can zoom in on it, I don't know if it's going to show up in this video or not, but the very bottom right-hand corner, it's got a tear in the book. So this is not a 9.8. And it also, I've also pulled it up on the CGC website because it's freshly graded, and CGC just screwed up, man, because it was on their website as well. So they just overlooked that tear to the book, or they damaged it putting it inside the case, which that's a whole nother complaint with CGC. But this is a book I'm still on the hunt for. I'm not willing to accept a book that's not really a 9.8, even though it's got the 9.8 label. So I buy the book, not the label. It did sell for $276. I'd pay $400 for this book all day long if I could find a true 9.8 grade for it. It's just hard to find G.I. Joe 22. Next up, G.I. Joe 155, I believe, is the last issue. Yeah, 155. This is the last issue in the original G.I. Joe run from Marvel. Great cover and very, very low print run, so it's always an expensive book. I love this cover, though. And that one sold for $513. So that just shows you how expensive that book is, because in a direct edition for G.I. Joe number 1, you're only probably maybe $200-300 more than this number. And that's for the first issue with all the first appearances. But this book is just so low printed from 1994. It was kind of as G.I. Joe was dying, obviously, since it was the last issue. Nobody bought it. And there's just not many of these in a 9.8. So $513. Here's the G.I. Joe special number 1, signed by Todd McFarlane in hot pink. How cool is that book? I've got this one in a direct edition. This one is signed, though. I don't have one signed. Very cool. And that one sold for a good deal. It sold for $871. So that book's come back down to earth a little bit. To get it signed by Todd McFarlane, I mean, that was about the going rate even a couple of months ago for just this book with unsigned in a 9.8. So I thought that was a really good deal there. Some Star Wars books, Star Wars #1 with a miswrap. It had a really bad miswrap at the top. 9.8, and it sold for $3,100. So despite the general lack of interest in Star Wars or Star Wars content from some, not all, but some of the community, Star Wars #1 continues to hold its value, and even ones like this that are badly miswrapped, it's still sold at $3,100. So it's just bucked the trend of every other Star Wars book, because every other Star Wars book is definitely on the way down. Star Wars #2, the first full appearance of Han Solo, Chewbacca, and Obi-Wan in comics. They appear on the cover in #1, but in terms of the actual story, it's #2. And that's a great cover as well. That book was, even a month or two ago, $1,800. This one sold for $1,400. So big drop in that book, and this one was freshly graded, nice centering and everything. So I probably should have bid on that, because that's one I wouldn't mind having. Star Wars 42, I got both a direct and a newsstand. This book is on the way down. It was on the cold list for Go Collect's coldest comics, and this is the direct edition in a 9.8. It sold for $950, which is actually a little higher than I expected it to see. And then the newsstand for the same book sold at $1,300. So, and that's about where they've been going. But even on eBay, they're selling for, I'd say the direct edition's more like $850 right now. You got to pay taxes on that though. So next up, Star Wars Clone Wars #3, the third appearance of Ahsoka. No one seems to care. $65. That's a little over case cost for a really great cover where Ahsoka pretends to be a slave and Anakin pretends to be a trader, a slave trader. So very, very cool cover, and it's the third appearance overall for Ahsoka. $65. Amazing that you can get it for that cheap. Some X-Men books. We've got X-Men #4, which is another book I'd like to get. I got two different high grade, mid grades, I guess, mid to high grades. 7.5 off-white to white pages. This is the first appearance of Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Toad, and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. It's also the second overall comic book appearance of Magneto. Great book. And I wasn't watching, I bid on this one just to track it, but the one I was interested in is the next one. This one sold for $32.62, but the one I really wanted was this one. This was freshly graded, the same book in an 8.0 with white pages. And I really wanted to buy this book, and I said if it stayed under $6,000 and actually had my wits about me, I might throw in a bid. I did not, and it sold for $5,600. So it came in below where my expectations were on the price, but now I'm glad I didn't buy it, because I've seen the Hakes virtual catalog, and I have a coffer built up again. So Hakes is probably where I'm going to be spending my money here in the next month or so. But this one is a beautiful book. It's definitely on my target list for next year. I love this cover. And to get the second overall comic book appearance of Magneto in an 8.0 with white pages for $5,600. Yes, that's a lot of money, but I would pay that. I would pay that if I had the money. Here's another one that's on my want list, and that's a 9.6 for X-Men #100. It's the old X-Men versus the new X-Men, and I just love the cover. That's really the main reason I want this book. And the 9.6 is pretty easy to find. A 9.8 is going to set you back $5,000 plus. I'm not paying 9.8 prices for a non-key issue like this. But for a 9.6, I would pay, they've been going kind of $800 to $900. That's where I've been seeing them consistently sell. And this one sold for $10.13. So it's on the upswing, probably because of the new Deadpool Wolverine movie that's coming out later this month. So I might wait till after that movie comes and goes in the theater and maybe try to target this one for later this fall, because they do come up very regularly on ComicLink in a 9.6 with white pages. But I love that cover, and I just think it would be a great book to have. Next up is another book on my want list in either a direct or a newsstand, and both of those did sell in this auction. The first one was a direct for Uncanny X-Men #142, which is the continuation of the Days of Future Past storyline and the death of all the alternate future X-Men. This one had a bad color rub right on the worst possible spot on the cover, so I wasn't interested in this direct edition. But I've got X-Men 141, the issue before this, in a newsstand, so I really would like to have this one in a newsstand as well. This one sold for $411, and then this newsstand was the one I probably should have bid on, but I just got distracted. And it's a 9.8 white pages newsstand. This is exactly the book I'm looking for, and it looked to be in really great shape, and it sold for $575. I was expecting $650, so probably should have bid on that one. That's the first time I've seen the newsstand come up in a while, but you win some and you lose some, and in this case, I decided to not bid. Ultimate Fallout number 4, the standard cover A, first appearance of Miles. It continues to drop like a rock. I say that every single month on ComicLink. This one sold for $920. First appearance of Miles for sub $1,000 now, and I'm seeing that price consistently across multiple platforms. So I'm really hoping that it continues to drop, and maybe when I get bored one day, I'll actually buy one, because I do want to have one for the collection. There's thousands of them on the census. There's no reason it should be as expensive as it is, but it, you know, it continues to drop, and it's dropped even well below what my target price point was to actually pull the trigger on one. So I'm going to keep rolling the dice that it continues to drop. That's all I really had for this look at recent sales on ComicLink. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.